In this video, we're going to install this fully adjustable air fork on my Jasion Retrovolt. A link to this air fork is above and also in the description. Before we get started on the install, I hope you like this video, subscribe to my channel, and let's get after it. First thing we want to do is remove the battery, unlock it, and then remove it from the frame so it lightens up the bike. I'm going to remove this cargo bag so that I can service this area and remove the handlebars. I'm also going to remove the front fender, headlight, and the front brake. I have two sawhorses and a 2x4 to prop up the front end. You can have a friend lift up the handlebars, and then I'm going to remove the front tire using a 15mm socket. Simply loosen those nuts up on either side. Move that lock tab out, then the wheel drops out of the bottom. To remove the handlebars and the stem cap, what you want to do is loosen the side bolts here that are 4mm. Then moving to the top of the steering tube, you're going to remove this little rubber piece that protects that screw, and then loosen the stem cap. And what you want to do is move up to the front and hold the fork up, because once you loosen that bolt, the fork could drop out of the bottom. So I got my leg up in the fork to hold it. What I'm going to do is remove the handlebars. So I'm going to set these handlebars down like this so that the cables are supported. Now that we have the handlebars set down, I'm going to remove the top cap like this. And this should come right out. There we have it. The fork is removed. Comparing the stock fork to the aftermarket one, you can see that it's a little bit taller, but we can adjust for that with the spacers that come with the new fork. Now, there's other forks on the market like the Bucklows, but it's at least a ½ inch taller here where the shock carryover is, and then the steering tube is at least 2 inches taller at the top, so it would really have heavy modifications if you go with that fork, but it can be done. So without further ado, let's get this new fork installed. Now, to install the new star nut on the steering tube like you have in the old one, the kit comes with this star nut driver, and what you want to do is thread the rod onto the star nut through to the other side, and then thread on the anvil down to the base of that, just finger tight. And then what you're going to do is place this over the steering tube and then use this as a guide, and then you hit that with the hammer and it drives it down into the steering tube and it swages it in place. Now I remove this piece, try to unscrew this. You may need a little channel locks to loosen that, and then spin this off. Remove the threaded rod in here, and now you can see that the star nut is driven into the top. Before we can install the fork, we need to install the race. The race is what allows the steering tube to move and swivel with ease. And you're going to install this race down here on the steering tube, but it flares at the end, so the end can get a little bit difficult. Plus, you want to grease this shaft. You want to put a little bit of some general purpose grease and get the shaft so it'll be easier to install. Then I'm going to slide it down, and then if I need to, I can tap it further down with an oversized piece of pipe or a block. Goes down pretty easily. There I have it. I got that race installed. It's down flush with the base. And then when I install that, you want to make sure that the components down here in the bottom in this little plastic piece are not moved, so that when you slide the new steering tube in there, that everything sits well and it's seated nice and easily. What I noticed when I picked these up, the stock fork is a lot heavier than this aluminum one, so that's kind of nice. This probably saves about a pound of weight. To install the new fork, we got the race seated, we had the shaft greased a little bit, and I'm making sure that everything is aligned under there, and then what I'm going to do is slide it up in to the steering tube on the frame. And I get this aligned, and then you're going to see this comes up like that. Then what you want to do is put your steering tube cap on. That keeps everything seated and the dust out of that area. And then I have these other spacers that came with the fork. Because this one is a little bit taller, I may need to utilize these different spacers. So this is a little bit of like trial and error. Maybe I'll use the big one instead of a few small ones. Came with a variety of lengths. And what you want to do is install the proper spacers so that the handlebars steering tube is just above the end of the tube. So you could test fit this. So I'm going to slide this on. So when I look in here, it's about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch from the top. So I'm going to go ahead and take my cap with the screw. And you can use the one that comes with the kit, or you can use the factory one. I'm going to reuse the factory one. I'm going to go ahead and tighten this down. Tighten this 5mm on the top of the stem cap. Turn this around. We can adjust this later, the alignment of everything. I want to make sure that there's no play in here, because if you get some play, then it wiggles around and it's not good for the bearings and race. They'll wear out. So you want to just tighten this down. And you can see it moves easily. So now that I have that installed, I'm going to go ahead and put my leg in here. I'm going to get the handlebars aligned. I can always come back and align it once it's down on the ground. That looks about good like that. I'm going to go ahead and tighten this down a little bit more. You don't want it too tight. If it's too tight, then the steering's hard to move around. Now I'm going to go ahead and tighten the bolts on the side of the handlebar stem. Looks really cool with the red on the top. It matches the aftermarket red brakes that I installed. We're going to install the tire on the new fork. One thing that I noticed is that this fork mounts are a bit thicker and they don't have the hole in it for this tab washer. So I'm going to go without the tab washer and just use the regular lock washer. So I'm going to slide this up in the dropouts. I'm going to put my washer on. And then I'm going to put my nut on. Before I tighten that down, I might drop the bike down. Now, I noticed the nut isn't fully protruding, so what I might do is actually go without the washer. I think that's what I'm going to do, is remove the washer altogether so that I have proper thread engagement on the nut. I got the bike dropped down. Make sure that that fork is seated in the dropouts. I'll go ahead and tighten this down. Now the new fork doesn't require this brake caliper bracket, so I'm going to go ahead and remove it. Like that. And then I want to seat the caliper onto the rotor. Going to be using the factory bolt with all the washers that are on the inside so that I can get the proper spacing off the rotor. Just want to make sure that nothing is hitting. Okay, get it about finger tight, and then we can do the alignment that we need. Got that about finger tight. You can see that it floats in and out. And then what I want to do is go up to the handlebars, pull the lever so that it aligns. Now the caliper is aligned on the rotor. Go ahead and tighten that down, both top and bottom. Now let's go ahead and test that. Spins freely, no issues. I can look down and it's a tight clearance. If it's starting to rub on the back of the caliper, you may need to add one spacer, just a small spacer, just to move this back so it doesn't rub. All right, let's install the front fender and the headlight. Slide this up. This is my headlight. It's the same as the factory one, the way it mounts. I do like the look of this aftermarket one. I link to this is in the description. I'm going to slide this around and bolt it up, but there's no bolt hole here. There is on the back. So you could do one of two things. You could drill this out with a drill and use the factory bolt, but there is threads on the back here, which is the same thread as one of the screws from the brake bracket. So I'm going to go ahead and use that using this oversized washer. I'm going to go ahead and the fender will be mounted a little bit back, about a ½ inch, but it's tolerable. And then same thing with the headlight. So I'm going to go ahead, install that back here. Tighten that down. It's nice because that bolt has Loctite on it. So this bracket for the fender doesn't quite match up. So could do one of two things. I could get some hardware that would turn this at 90 degrees so that I could bolt the original factory bolts on with a little bit of a bracket. I could go without the front fender. I do like the front fender, and I have an idea. I'm going to use some of the leftover hardware from the brake upgrade, and I got these clamps from another build that I did, and I'm going to utilize these to secure the fender. So I can simply install that around here, and then that will hold the fender in place the way I need it. So that's what I'm going to do to get this to stay secure. I don't think it looks too bad, but these are kind of beefy forks, so this may not be ideal either. I probably could just hold them together with zip ties and then bolt this on, no problem. But let's go ahead and try that. I can use these black screws from the brake upgrade, or I could use the factory ones. It doesn't matter, but I'm going to go ahead and install that. There's a nut that goes on the back of these fender brackets. It's nice because it's recessed. So once you get it in that pocket, it tightens down. So it's not too bad. Looks pretty good. I could raise this up so it's even, but I'm going to go ahead and do the other side. Looking good. Don't forget to reconnect the headlight like that. You could set this rubber bar down low so you can see how far it travels. And then this section allows you to change the dampening if you want. Last thing to do is get the air pressure adjusted for the rider's weight. There is a sticker on the inside of the fork. It tells you exactly how many PSI you need in the fork. Now I'm about 165 pounds, so it tells me to use between 60 and 90 PSI on this shock pump. So if I look here, it's set to about 80. I'll give it a little bit of air, but there I'm at 90. So that's good to go. Go ahead, reinstall that cap. I got the air fork installed and it's riding great. It provides much better dampening over the factory fork. The handlebars do sit about an inch taller, but it's pretty negligible when you're out riding it. Now I do have air suspension on the rear and on the front, so I can dial it in based on my weight and riding conditions. I'm really happy with the results. I hope you liked this video. Subscribe to my channel. If you have any questions, please leave in the comments, and thanks for watching.